Hi, my name is Abby Bolt. My endorsement is in business marketing and IT, grades 6 through 12, and this TechSat field trip is for a 10th grade personal finance class. Our field trip is going to help us conclude our budgeting unit and introduce us to our checking unit. The activities in my tech set are going to be 5 different activities that will show the correlation between managing your budget and effective ways to balance your checkbook. These activities are designed to build on prior knowledge. The way I designed this tech set is so that students will be able to utilize Google Drive and go in just like we do at College of St. Mary's and file, make a new copy with their last name and their personal finance budgeting and checking tech set and save it into their personal finance 101 folder that is shared with me. This way I can do this activity if I were to be out for the day and the students can still have a way to undergo effective learning. Moving into the first slide, instructions for use. This is where I introduce what our new unit's going to be about, how it's building on what we previously covered in our budgeting unit. And my lesson objectives are to effectively draw connections between budgeting money and managing personal finances, to accurately identify personal finance terminology, and third, to develop comprehension skills by reading and reflecting on nonfiction books and articles. The purpose that I focused on for my literary field trips is to engage in effective note-taking while reading business content. Let's all face it, business content can be a little bit dry at times. So any way that I can spice up my content or create tech sets for my students that will help them be engaged in different forms of texts and videos and articles, I'm going to try to incorporate into my classroom just to make it more exciting. I also want them to understand the connection between budgeting and balancing the checkbook, and lastly, to effectively use several tech set resources to help guide content area learning. So to kick it off, we're going to start with an icebreaker. This is a budgeting video. It's a Saturday Night Live skit. And for all of my other classes that I've shown this for, it's been a really big hit. So start it off here. Give you a little blurb of it so you can get part of the effect of the video.
This unique new program for managing your debt. It's called Don't Buy Stuff You Cannot Afford.
Let me see that. If you don't have any money, you should not buy anything. Sounds interesting.
Sounds confusing.
I don't know.
So that's just a little bit of a blurb, and if you're interested in looking it up, you can always go to YouTube to watch the full version, and it's called Don't Buy Things You Can't Afford. This one has these translations down below, but it was the only one I could find with the full version, so I think the students will be able to look past it. The key message from this skit is don't buy things you cannot afford, so I thought this was just a little bit of fun to add this slide in and show a picture of the skit. Then what my learning activity is based off the video, you need to list 3 reasons why we should budget or save our money. Now, when you're actually in the PowerPoint slide, I have text boxes created right inside of these circles so the students can just go right in and start typing their answers. So I think this is a good activity to show that you can add humor, you can add fun videos into class, but they can also be educational at the same time. So that's going to be our first text set. Our second one is going to be Show Me Your Thinking. This is a KWL activity where you show what you know, what you want to learn, and what you learn. This is going to focus on budgeting your money and the importance of balancing your checkbook. So I want the students to be able to make correlations between what we just learned in our budgeting unit, what they already know. They can also fill in what they want to learn, and then what they have learned, they're going to have to reflect back at the end of the lesson. So I do remind them later because I don't want any students to miss any points, but I also say you may reflect back at the end of the lesson to fill out the learned column. So this will help me gauge what students already know, kind of things they have questions on, and then I can see at the end when they fill out the learned column if my text set was effective in teaching them or helping them answer any other questions that they have about our new checkbook unit. Going into our third text set, this is an interview with Quincy Miller. So I have a link to an interview, and then I have 6 guided questions that help gauge the student's comprehension. So if we click on this link here, this takes us to an interview of the president of Citizens Bank. And the reason I like that this interview is, first of all, it has students reading something besides the textbook, but it's still complex text. It's a really conversational interview where it's talking about the importance of still writing checks. So why is it important that we still write these? Well, if you're a small business owner, if you have a personal account or a business checking account, why it's important to keep those separate. Awesome questions asked throughout here. And one thing that I really liked about this is I was able to go ahead on my question set and I could ask questions for things that they could actually find in the actual interview, but I also want them to show me their thinking. So for example, one of my guided questions, number 4 here, what's the most popular way for a small business to receive payment? In at least 2 sentences, please reflect on whether or not you are surprised by the most popular way and explain why or why not. Now, they're going to find that the most popular way for small businesses to receive payment is by writing checks. But the way that I check for their comprehension and see how the student feels or thinks about it is I ask for them to reflect on it. So I really wanted my guided questions to expand on the student's thinking, not just have them looking for specific answers while reading the interview. Our next text set is Intro to Checking. So this is going to be our 3-2-1 notes. So now that they have talked about budgeting, watched the video, kind of talked about what they know, they've got to read the interview, which introduces them to checking. Now they can go do the 3-2-1 notes and actually read out of their economic education book. 3-2-1, I want them to write 3 things they learned, 2 questions they still have, and 1 key takeaway. This, again, is going to help me gauge where they're at with the information. It's going to introduce a new vocabulary about our checking unit, and it's only 5 pages long. So they'll really get engaged with the text on these 5 pages. Lastly, to check for learning from their reading activity, we're going to go over the parts of a check. This is going to be the summary part of my unit, or of my text field trip. So they're going to match their newly learned vocabulary from Chapter 8 into the blank spaces on the check. So what they'll do is they will take these alphabetical letters down here with the vocab word and drag them to the correct spot on the check. This is just a good way to check for vocabulary terms. Obviously, some of them, date, that's going to be a freebie, but it is important to know where the routing number is and the check number and account number. So all of these are really great terminology to kind of lead into what our next activities are. Also, as part of the summary is they're going to reflect on the text set that they completed. They need to have a minimum of 3 sentences, and they must reflect on their key takeaways, what activities they enjoyed the most and why, and tell me how budgeting and money relates to managing our checkbooks. So this is a good way for them to reflect back on what they learned, close out their thoughts on budgeting, and start thinking about the checking unit. And this way I can gauge what they enjoyed and what maybe I could change for future text sets, and what things that, kind of fuel the inspiration for my class, so that way I can incorporate more of that into my classroom setting. The last page, congrats, you've successfully completed your field trip. And then I have 3 little check marks. Make sure you don't forget to complete the Learn section of your KWL so they go back up and they don't lose any points there. Be sure you created a copy and you shared it on your Google Drive with me in your personal finance folder so you can get credit. And lastly, so they can get excited because tomorrow we'll begin practicing filling out checks. So that way they have a little bit of preview for what they have to look forward to the remainder of the week in class. In conclusion, I use a few different text set ideas. I use video, news article, and most popular in my presentation is going to be instructional. My experience researching, there's a lot of great material available for budgeting and checking units. You just have to dig through it to find things that are engaging and exciting and that the kids will really enjoy. My excitement is I loved how this text set concludes one unit and then introduces another one and shows how they go together. I think that's so important in the business world to have one unit work into the next unit. So that's really nice. My nerves with anything involving technology, you always hope your links work and that students know how to utilize and navigate Google Drives and make sure they know how to make their own copy. I think I have the instructions laid out pretty easily, but just make sure that everything works and is efficient for the students. And in conclusion, this is a great example of how to infuse different forms of content reading into an interactive learning lesson. So although this took a lot of time to create, they are well worth the efforts. And students will actually gain a lot of knowledge from going through these literary text units. So I appreciate your guys' time, and I hope you enjoyed my budgeting and checking unit and learned something new today. Have a great day.